What progress has been made to bring your election technology back to working condition? How much of it will have to be replaced?
Our current system that we're under the virtual system that we were able to get to. Prior to that, we were established 2 days prior to the hurricane to move in that direction. All of our servers, including those, were experienced water. Other than the emergency one we had at the Emergency Management Center, they all experienced water. The servers that we used in this election, we took out onto the sidewalk, took them apart piece by piece, used a vacuum cleaner with a hose in a different direction, using to blow the water out of all circuit boards, all switches, all the areas, used a toothbrush to get all the ceiling debris outside of the circuit boards and any connections that might not work well with a little bit of debris and water in them. Let them dry for 2 days. We had the confidence, we just had to believe that it would work, and we put them back together and we carefully turned them on, and believe it or not, those were the servers we actually did our election with.
It's my understanding that your office is relatively new DS200s and Express votes. Will you have to replace any of those systems?
Well, the good news is that only half of the roof came off of our building. The back part was in our warehouse, had some coverage, and when the water was coming in, we were able to move things around, get more coverage, protect things. Myself, my technician, and a couple other individuals were actually in this building when the hurricane hit, and we're very fortunate that we were, because for the next 2 days, we worked very hard to get back up to where we could even have a possibility of conducting an election.
So you stayed in this building for 2 days without going home, without seeing your family, etc.
Yeah, that was a requirement, and well, part of it was a requirement. The other one was you couldn't get out on the roads. You weren't allowed to go out on the roads. Security was in total lockdown. So we did bring some food, but we didn't plan on, restrooms and things of that nature. Everybody kind of kids and goes, well, you can go out into the woods or you can go out in the other area. Well, after this hurricane, there weren't any more trees. So some things you just don't look at as what are the necessities, and restrooms become quite important if you're in one area for a certain period.
One of the more interesting things too, Tom, is of all of the 8 affected counties, essentially none of the actual tabulating equipment that was used to conduct the election was damaged in any of the 8 counties. They were all able to maintain their equipment without fail as it came to that, which was just for the devastation that this entire area has affected. Of course, Bay County being front and center. It was amazing that the voting equipment survived as well as it all did.
What are some of the high-level considerations going into the purchase decision in light of Hurricane Michael?
Support, self-support. I think one of the issues is self-support, that also working with the Association of Supervisors of Elections in the state of Florida to say, okay, if we're going to have these emergencies, maybe we should look at how we should buy pieces and parts that would benefit everyone. And then when half of the state has an emergency, you have those parts available and inventoried, able to be moved and assist each other, knowing that they're already there, knowing that they're available. Because when you're in the devastation of the hurricane, life is the initial part, then there's food, then there's water, then there's shelter, and all those pieces. That's FEMA's job. FEMA's job is really not ensuring that elections get done, and it's kind of an add-to piece. So I think it's important at a high level we look at those kinds of planning processes, and also realizing that you can have the best COOP plan under the sun, and given what we've just gone through, I will tell you, once you've exhausted everything in your COOP plan, you did use your COOP plan, but what are your opportunities? Because we were going through 30-minute intervals of deciding what was our next event, how we were going to cure it, but we used the, people, infrastructure, equipment, communication, use that over and over and over again, and just repeated that no matter what. That proved to be the best COOP plan for us to do, rather than just reading a book.
Can you explain what COOP is?
Well, it's continuing operations, procedures, or policies. It's just how do you keep going and do what you normally do. Now, in our office, we're ISO certified, which is a quality management system. We're very uniform in process, and that was one of our very biggest strengths that helped us get through this. That anyone, you got to have a good quality management process and a uniformity in place, so that when an emergency does happen, that you just go into that uniformity and you know quick what's missing and you can get it back in place, more efficient.
And one of the things we discussed at conference was each county purchasing as needed use satellite phones, because communicating with Mark and his staff, communicating with the other counties in the affected area was truly one of the biggest challenges of all of this, finding out if everyone was okay, finding out what their needs were, and then figuring out how to meet those needs. But when you can't call them, you can't email them, it's a really hard thing to be able to continue those communications without what we have become accustomed to.
That's why the Secretary of State physically came to our county and assessed the situation and realized why they weren't communicating with us, because there just wasn't anything available. I mean, when internet, email, physical pieces, your fax machines, your power, I mean, when there is nothing, you start with what you can get and then grow from there.
Okay. Will Bay County need to replace any equipment, voting system equipment, or other election technology such as e-poll books?
Not this time for the actual election equipment, more of our replacement parts. When the devastation happened and the roof came off, we had enough. We're big into plastic here with a lot of plastic bags and power cords. Those are two things we have a lot of here. And that served us well to have a lot of extra plastic to quickly realize that we're in a rainforest in our office, and that we immediately went to the back and tried to. The fact that we were in the building probably saved us thousands and thousands of dollars, because the equipment could have easily been damaged had we not been here in the building while the hurricane was taking place, and we were trying to protect things as wherever it would pop up that another spill of water would come down.
Is Bay County looking to use this as a positive opportunity to upgrade the technology to improve overall security of its systems?
We did. We had intentional. They just pushed us right into the environment that we talk regularly. What are we doing to make things better, that we're more secure? Our facility was a pretty secure facility that was important. It'd been nice to know it was built for a Category 3 before we'd been in the building. Some of us thought it was for a 4, but
And Michael was a 4.
yeah, a 4+ for sure.
Right.
That's what they're saying now. It's a 4+, and that gets into your consideration. Do you haul things? Where would you have taken them? How many would you have taken when you get into the large volumes? But being in the building is what saved our election equipment, and I think that where we're at now for security and the other elements, we're just go right back into what we had before. Good policy, good procedure, good security, and improve it.
Well, and now, of course, it's time for those of us who weren't in the affected area to look at what happened to Mark and what happened to the other 7 counties and go, okay, so if this storm had not turned and had hit Okaloosa County, what would the roof on my warehouse have looked like? And so, I mean, I can tell you that just going forward for our own planning purposes, in addition to things like satellite phones and extra power cords and lamps and things like that, I will be approaching my commissioners to say, what is the roof on my current election warehouse rated to, and do we need to put a new roof on top of that building so that if the next storm hits us instead of Bay County or Pensacola or somewhere else in the Gulf, are we going to be able to survive? Because I cannot imagine what the devastation would look like had that storm hit us. My elections warehouse probably would have been leveled. It's a really old building and the roof is ancient. I mean, we stood through Ivan, but Ivan hit us to the west. We were on the bad side of the Ivan storm, but we were still outside the storm wall. If we had been anywhere in the path of the storm wall, we would have certainly had more devastation than we had.